External GPUs, or eGPUs for short, are an interesting technology. They allow you to use a full-sized desktop GPU, provided that your device supports it. However, there are some considerations. Consider that you are probably using a portable device such as a laptop or handheld gaming device, for example, a Steam Deck. Implicitly, does it not make much sense that you would opt for a device which hampers your mobility? Consider that you might want better processing power on your device's screen, whereas the Thunderbolt or USB protocols will then split the available bandwidth between the input and output signals. For this reason, it is much better to use an external monitor. But wouldn't that just complicate things and again make your setup less portable? Consider that there are a myriad of compatibility questions that must be verified in order to ensure that you are ordering the ideal combination of eGPU dock and actual GPU itself, not to mention that you are losing tremendous amounts of performance, such that you might miss the moving performance target that you're aiming for in the first place. For these reasons and more, I would say that eGPUs are like sitting on a fence, and it's a picketed fence. You will lose graphical performance, you will lose mobility, and you will pay more money for this privilege. But I did just turn 26 a few months ago. Maybe I'm just an old geezer. To investigate this hypothesis, let me introduce some tools that we will use and discuss some tests. I have two eGPU docks and two graphics cards. The first dock is the Razer Core X. It's a Thunderbolt 3 dock. It has a 750 watt power supply, and they don't manufacture or sell it anymore. The second dock is the ADT Link UT3G. According to eGPU.io, it is and has been the top-ranked eGPU dock since I first thought about making this video, about 9 months ago. It supports Thunderbolt 3, 4, and USB 4 protocols, but requires you to provide your own power supply. The Thunderbolt 4 and USB 4 protocols are an important distinction. They do in fact allow you to dedicate more data bandwidth. While the often quoted 40 gigabits per second is a complete and utter lie, and so is the 32 gigabits per second figure for Thunderbolt 3, it's due to overhead, the same reason why you install a 1024 gigabyte, as in a 1 terabyte SSD into your computer, and Windows hits you with the pawn shop, best I can do is 953 gigabytes. It's because of overhead. These technologies need to take a little tax of sorts to administer your services. I used CUDA-Z to run a test to illustrate this point. I used the Geekom IT12 and the RTX 3060 Ti and tested CUDA-Z using both eGPU docks. Using the Razer Core X, which only supports Thunderbolt 3, we see that the host-to-device data rate is 2,127.53 megabytes per second, or in English, 17.85 gigabits per second. Meanwhile, the UT3G uses Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4, and its host-to-device data rate was 2,738.13 megabytes per second, or again, in English, 22.97 gigabits per second. The results suggest that Thunderbolt 4 will perform better than USB 3, and by approximately 28% in this instance. However, there are many problems with this test. The two eGPU docks are using different Thunderbolt controllers, and the UT3G has the advantage of PCIe 4.0 bandwidth. For a start. Well, let's evaluate Red Dead Redemption 2 at high settings and low settings using the RTX 3060 Ti and both docks. First, using the UT3G on high settings, an average frame rate of 78. Second, using the UT3G on low settings, an average frame rate of 85. For the differences in visual quality, I would be more inclined to choose the high quality, as on average, the frame rate difference is only 9% and still above 60 or even 75 frames per second on average. The 1 percentile frame rates and not 1 percentile frame rates were not much different, though the not 1 frame rate on the high setting was 10.9 frames per second, which is pretty rough. You might be wondering at this point why the results are not much different. The reasoning behind this is because of the constrained bandwidth, because unlike the highways, we'd actually benefit from more lanes being available for traffic. As for the Razer Core X, you'll see that the reduced speed ahead slows things down even more. Third result, using the Razer Core X on high settings, an average frame rate of 47. Fourth, using the Razer Core X on low settings, also an average frame rate of 47. The 1 percentile and not 1 percentile frame rates aren't much different. In both cases, we have to assess decimal points because the results are within 1 point of each other. Though this may seem counterintuitive, consider the highway analogy again. The speed of the road is fixed, the number of lanes are fixed, and it's just a matter of how many cars are on the road. What can you take away from these benchmarks? eGPUs will probably limit your performance heavily, so using an eGPU to give a mini PC better gaming performance is a non-starter. Is there a market, a use case, a customer for eGPUs even still? Let's set up some conditions. Condition 1, you do not own a gaming PC. Condition 2, you have legitimate reason to require the portability of an eGPU solution. For example, you travel for work, you live split between different housing arrangements, etc. Condition 3, you own a compatible device that you otherwise do not want to sell, you need to use it for school, work, or etc. 3.1. This device in question supports external GPUs through the usage of Thunderbolt or USB video output. 3.2. You have user access to the Thunderbolt controller on the device, i.e., that there is not an administrator or BIOS password that prevents you from adding new Thunderbolt devices. I would recommend checking this twice or more, as it has happened to me previously. Given these conditions, here is my proposal. I tested 3 games using my ThinkPad T480 with the Razer Core X and GTX 1080 Ti. Under these assumptions, I already owned the T480 and was just looking to purchase the Razer Core X and a GPU so as to make games a bit more enjoyable. I tested Red Dead Redemption 2, Counter-Strike 2, and Fallout 4. I used an external monitor to maximize the Thunderbolt bandwidth available to the GPU, as it otherwise would have to split the lanes to send the video back to my ThinkPad's display. As for the user experience, Red Dead Redemption 2 was unplayable, or pretty close to it. The CPU was maxed out on my ThinkPad. Thankfully, it appeared we were not Thunderbolt bandwidth limited, but rather my particular CPU was just not powerful enough. I assume this problem would only get worse as the game becomes more active and more engaging, which is exactly when you don't want to have particularly poor performance. Counter-Strike 2 is commonly played on low settings. I used high settings in an attempt to stress the system. I think that this is more useful for a test than playing at low settings and attempting to use my statistics knowledge to determine how much of a problem the delta between the 1 and not 1 frame rates were. I did poorly in statistics. Overall, I would say that this experience was quite playable and probably would have been better at lower settings. Given the right circumstances, I could endorse this option. Fallout 4 was frankly quite a surprise for me. It performed really quite well, and I don't recall much problem with the frame times and frame rates. The action was smooth, and the performance quite good on ultra settings. I just ran around the Commonwealth for about 10 minutes, taking out some ghouls, looting a bit. I would endorse this option, though it should be noted that Fallout 4 is a 2015 title, though this is the next-gen update, for whatever that's worth. What then can be determined from these prices and the performance? Well, here are some fast takeaways. Red Dead Redemption 2 did not really work on the ThinkPad. The performance was more acceptable on the Geekom IT12, however, that's at least a 3 times difference in price. Consider that before you just build a gaming PC instead. Counter-Strike and Fallout 4 were acceptable, by my standards, on the ThinkPad T480. What I take from this is that you will likely be CPU limited by the laptop or portable gaming device you already have. If you want to play the newest, highest graphical fidelity games, you may wish to consider not taking this route, or frankly, the mini PC route either. Well, that was my experience, and there are the numbers of all the stuff and things like that. I mean, it looks to me like you definitely shouldn't buy a mini PC and then attempt to attach an eGPU to it in the vain hopes of approaching even remotely similar performance to just using an ordinary, desktop PC and stuff. I promise you, pinky swear and all, I definitely didn't do that. That's definitely not what inspired this video. I would never do something like that. That's just completely ridiculous. But yeah, anyway, thank you for watching and stuff. I hope you probably don't buy a mini PC and try and use it with an external GPU dock. Thunderbolt 5 is supposedly coming out, or something like that, sooner or later. But you're still working with a flawed premise. You're going to just take ordinary, PCIe, let's say you have a motherboard 5.0 version, bandwidth, and you're just going to take that down from being 16 lanes all the way down to like four lanes PCIe bandwidth, so no matter what, you're basically going to, it's not exactly, basically cutting it into a quarter. Usually you get about somewhere between 50% to 70% performance, but I'm just ranting now. If you have a laptop and stuff, and if cache is a bit tight and you think, I just kind of want to have a little bit better graphics performance on my laptop, then, that's not such a bad idea. I would say that you've basically got the right idea at that point. Don't do what I definitely didn't do. I'm not being sarcastic. I definitely didn't do that. That's definitely not why I have these things. I'm definitely not about to just go and list them on eBay right now, or on my local, Facebook Marketplace and stuff. That's not going to happen. I very much enjoy using these things, and thank you very much for watching the video.